Hello and welcome to the Irish Independent's weekly GAA Championship preview video. Delighted to be joined by Dermot Crowe from the Sunday Independent. Dermot, how are you?
Very well, Michael, thank you.
One of the best weekends in the calendar, Dermot. All-Ireland hurling semi-final weekend, Saturday evening and Sunday. It has produced some cracking weekends down through the years.
It has, yeah. It has been a terrific hurling championship. I'm sure you agree.
Relax now. There's always highlights.
Tapping it straight away. But yeah, it has produced some great games, classic matches, and I suppose we have a surprise this year with Dublin being in it and Limerick knocked out and all that. So that starts off the semi-final, obviously, and on Saturday, the first one up. And
it's not mad to say that we have the traditional big three, and we still have a surprising semi-final parents, if you get me. It's not funny, with Limerick being out, like nobody would have predicted that they wouldn't be in the last four realistically. No, very few outside of the Dublin dressing room.
Outside of Dublin, I suppose, yeah. And it was a terrific game, that match, that created one of the best games of the championship. And I think, while people are talking about Limerick being a little off, and they probably were, maybe they were fading a little bit, and that, and it only takes a little fraction, across the board to build up to that kind of fatal loss of key metrics that leaves you vulnerable. But it needed a really serious performance in Dublin to take advantage of it, and they produced it. Now, they had certain things going their way, they earned it, and a miraculous save late on in the game from Sean Brennan, for example. Like, you wouldn't expect, how many times out of 1,000 would you expect a save like that to be made from Aaron Gillan, and he probably should have finished. It was a miraculous save, and they got 2 goals in quick succession when they needed them. But they kind of earned those breaks and produced a remarkable performance, particularly after a disappointing Leinster campaign.
Niall Ó Ceallacháin, I know he's someone you know fairly well from time in Na Fianna. He's really worked the oracle here. Like, it was a disappointing league. I'd say they were frustrated after the league because they would have had their eyes in promotion, and a couple of sending offs and a tight defeat to Offaly and a tight defeat to Waterford as well. And even the Galway defeat at the end of Leinster, but they've turned it around spectacularly. Talk to me a bit about him. And he's had a remarkable 6 months, even with Na Fianna winning the club All-Ireland, and he had his young fella on the field after that, and he had his young fella on the field the other day. The kid has had a remarkable 6 or 7 months as well. It's been an amazing journey so far for him.
Yeah, well, I suppose you look at it in the context of appointments, Dublin hurling appointments over the years, right back, I suppose, to Anthony Daly, which was a fantastic appointment for Dublin at the time. And there's been a kind of a reliance on, we'll say, outsiders. And there appeared to be a lack of credible alternatives in-house alternatives, if you want to call them that. And even at that, Neil's appointment would have probably created a bit of a surprise, even with the Na Fianna business and all that. It wasn't.
He was the outsider of the four, I would have said.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it took a bit of maybe courage in some respects, but I think he probably made a strong pitch, and he has a kind of, I suppose, a track record on the local scene. He's terrific knowledge of the club scene, and that he's obviously introduced a good few Na Fianna players into that as well, like someone like Conor McHugh, for example.
Yeah, what a bolter!
Incredible. The impact he had the last day was sensational. Sean Curry and all these guys have kind of started to prosper a bit. But it was a move for Dublin away from the reliance on outsiders and a trust in themselves. And I suppose the club game, I think, in Dublin has improved a great deal over the last, I've seen it over the last 10, 12 years. And, there's some very strong club teams, 3 or 4 certainly in Dublin. And that's where it has to come from, working outwards rather than coming out from the outside. So he's another step in that direction. He's low key. He's a good fella. The kind of what you see in terms of the profile publicly is probably a little different to what he's like privately. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he is. I think what he has is that he's a tremendous application and dedication to it. He's very detailed. He is very good with players, in looking after players and building up a relationship with players in a genuine way, not a kind of superficial or false way. I don't think there's any ego there. And it's interesting as well, because for players like Dublin players, they do kind of get a dependency, I'd say, like all players, on high-profile appointments. So it's interesting to see that kind of relationship working both ways. As you said, it depends on results. They didn't get some of those results in the league their way. They kind of were slightly gone in the wrong direction. You know, they kind of lost an hour against Offaly, for example, and but they kind of got some of those then in the championship against Offaly and Wexford, but had a very disappointing day against Galway. And people were saying after the Galway game, which was essentially a semi-final, Leinster semi-final, that this was just like the way it used to be. You know, you'd build up kind of a bit of hope and then it would fall flat. And I was there myself. It was a very disappointing day, but it's obviously revived itself now with this great win over Limerick. But a big ask against Cork. That
would be my fear going into this weekend, that the expectancy is high again and that it's going to be hard to deliver on that. But I liked even his interview after the Limerick game. He was talking about step 2 of 4. And you're like, after the biggest win of your life, just to be that cool and calculated. Do you think they can scale those type of heights that they did against Limerick, against the Cork side that, you know, they're obviously ravenous for an All-Ireland at this stage as well?
Short answer is no. But I think that Cork, you know, they've had a 4-week break. They're coming off winning the Munster Championship. They're getting players back. I know Seamus Harnedy is injured. He's got a hamstring injury. But some of the players are coming back in and they've a lot of options on the bench. They also pose a serious goal threat, I think. Like Limerick didn't score a goal, did they?
No, and they were kind of happy. And I think Dublin were happy to keep them on the outside as well and let them take their points. Even I'm thinking of Paddy Smith pulling Galan down and what. They were just happy to keep them on the outside and make sure they didn't get in. But Cork are a different animal with the likes of Brian Hayes, Hoggy, etc.
They are. So that presents a real threat to them, you know. So are they able to kind of produce that level of performance again? Will even that performance be good enough to beat Cork? I'm not sure it will. Like, I'm hoping they do well, that they make a match of it, that they start well for 20 minutes, they settle into the game. They don't kind of find themselves in 7 or 8 points down early in the match, you know, that sort of conceding early goal or whatever it is, that type of thing. So if the longer they stay in the match, obviously it'll grow. And it'll be interesting to see, because they produced a performance nobody really expected. But this is even tougher now to go along and try and consolidate it with another one. Even if it doesn't necessarily mean they win the game, if they can produce a good performance and get up to that level again, it'll be a fairly impressive season for them. I think, you know, something to build on overall going into next year.
Yeah, it's only 12 months since they ran Cork quite close in the quarter-final as well. So it's they're not playing a team that's totally alien to them. They've been very competitive against them before. So it's kind of nice to have that in the memory bank as well, even though probably Cork weren't at full tilt the same day. But you wouldn't say Dublin were at full tilt the same day either. So
No, and I hope there's a better game than that one on Saturday. I'm sure it will be. Like, it was a drab enough encounter. I think Cork were kind of comfortable enough, and Dublin came back kind of late in the game, as if suddenly they realised we could maybe get something out of this, you know. So, but it's there, and both teams know each other very well, you know. And Cork didn't expect this probably initially, but they've played Dublin before. They'll have their homework done. There'll be no surprises there, you know. They were very familiar with it. Obviously, Dublin are missing Chris Crummy, and that Conor Dunn will be back in as an option.
It's funny when you think like they're going to be restored to 15 from the start. It's amazing what they did with 14. It really is.
It is amazing. It's remarkable. And that day was very humid, if you remember. But their level of energy they brought to it, the work rate was incredible. You might say Limerick didn't make the most of that extra man, that tactically they were a bit maybe complacent or didn't make hay there. But it took an enormous shift from Dublin to win that match. I mean, the work they put in was incredible. And it wasn't perfect. Not perfect. They missed chances as well. But they took some great scores for Conor Burke, and some of those scores were fantastic. You know, Sean Curry, and they did an awful lot right. They hurled very well. You know, so yeah, it was all the more incredible, because who would have given them a chance 15 minutes in, but a man less? You know, it didn't look good. Let's be honest.
No, definitely didn't. We also have the curtain raiser to that game is Clare and Waterford in the All-Ireland Camogie quarter-final, and then the curtain raiser to Sunday's big hurling semi-final is Kilkenny and Tip. So plenty of Kilkenny and Tip jerseys heading to Croke Park on Sunday. We also have the ladies football quarter-finals this weekend. Kerry against Kildare. Kerry obviously the defending All-Ireland champions. Galway and Waterford. Dublin and Cork. They're all on Saturday. And a very, very busy Sunday for any Tip supporters trying to get to Croke Park for, I think it's 1:30. The big game is at 4:00, and then people can't be in two places at once, so they're playing a quarter-final against Meath in the ladies' football in Park Talchin at 5:15 as well. So very, very busy day. The main event on Sunday, Dermot, Kilkenny and Tip. What what stands out in your mind from that rivalry down through the years? We've been treated to some of the greatest moments, some of the greatest games we've ever seen.
Well, there's like, it's a massive rivalry going back to the start of the GAA, and I remember when they met in the 2009 All-Ireland final. I went down to Kilkenny to do a piece down to Tullaroan. Dick Walsh was 91 years of age at that stage. He was a famous follower and fanatic, and with a terrific memory. He cycled to the 1937 All-Ireland down in Killarney. He left on the day before the morning at 9 o'clock, stayed in some thatched pub that night, and got up at 5 the next morning to cycle down to Killarney.
Different times.
Different times. He bought the bike from the local postman and cycled off with some friend, and then he said it was a tough journey down, but it was a tougher one back because they were well beaten by Tip that day. And his own man, Laurie Marr, played his last game coming on as a sub for Kilkenny that day. But he was talking about the rivalry that time, and how kind of big it is, and how keen and how hot it can get. And he was talking about a story back in the early years of the association when a team from Tullaroan was going to Hurlingford to play a Tipperary team. And they stopped at a Mrs. Walsh's house in Rathili, which I think is somewhere inside the border in Kilkenny, looking for a bit of nourishment. So they went in, they said, would you have a sup of tea there, Mrs. Walsh? And she says, tea is it? Tea is it? And you going out to meet to hurl Tipperary, like that wouldn't do. You need something stronger. But so that rivalry was, of course, fierce, really, really bitter at times, and cutthroat. Is it quite the same at the minute? Probably not so much, but it doesn't take much to ratchet it up, because it's not that it's in the recent memory, and it's part of the tradition of that fixture, and it's a famous one. There's no doubt about that. 6
years since the last Met in Championship, Dermot. That was an All-Ireland final. Plenty of controversy, obviously, with Richie Hogan sending it off. James Owens is the man in the middle again on Sunday. I think what you're saying about the rivalry, familiarity does kind of breed a bit of contempt. The more they meet, the more flashpoints they are or whatever. But it's kind of two different kind of teams coming into it. Kilkenny have loads of experience, been at this stage, obviously have been in finals in recent times. They're looking to end a 10-year famine for the All-Ireland. Tipperary, this is their first time back in Croke Park since that 2019 final. Loads of new faces. Robert Doyle and Sam O'Farrell, Darren McCarthy, Brian O'Mara, Owen Connolly, it's Andrew Ormond, etc., etc. Yeah. Do you think experience could be the difference? Like Tip have maybe the youthful enthusiasm and abandon, whereas Kilkenny do have all the experience and still have the likes of TJ, Hugh Lawler, Owen Murphy, all those faces that have been around, the guts of a decade or more in TJ's case.
Yeah, I do. I think it has to be a factor because they're battle hardened. Kilkenny, they're championship hardened. They're serial semi-finalists, and they've been to a few finals since. As you say, Tip have been out of it for a while. Didn't get through it all last year, out of their group, and they've made progress this year. They have made progress getting semi-final. They have fellas who they've been waiting to mature into serious players. Of those under 20, under 21 teams that Liam Cahill had, there's a fair spread of them now, coming in, Andrew Ormond, those guys, Jake Morris, Owen Connolly, those guys are starting really to kind of, I think, get the confidence now and are starting to kind of mature into really good players, but just lacking that bit of experience maybe at this level. I think maybe in the quarterfinal, we were talking about the Dublin Limerick game being a terrific game, which it was. The other semi-final quarter-final was a poor, very disappointing match. More not Tipperary's fault, I suppose. Just Galway disappointed a great deal, and yet I suppose one thing I noticed in that match was that they still created, Galway, as poor as they were, openings for goals. And maybe a pass away from it being a serious situation.
You'd imagine Kilkenny would be a little more ruthless.
With on Cody possibly playing Sunday or maybe playing some part on Sunday, and Mossy Keogh and those lads, they do have that ability to get through TJ for goals or create those overlaps and go for the jugular. No, like maybe Tipperary would be obviously maybe better organised in this match and to be ready for it. But I think that would be a concern for me from a Tipperary point of view after the Galway game, that Kilkenny might get at them that way.
There's an interesting one as well. There's a bit of a Dennis Byrne in the Tipperary backroom team as well, with David Herrity's involvement. Former Kilkenny goalkeeper, obviously. He was goalkeeping coach for Tipperary last year. He's a bit more, I think, hands-on this year. That's kind of a little interesting subplot to it all as well.
It is, I suppose, and it's funny the way these things can rile teams, isn't it?
Yeah, big time, yeah.
That they can really get het up over these things, Maybe even Kieran Donaghy last weekend with Armagh, when Cork, Gerald McCarthy went to Cork, and not just to pick him out, but just these things can be very funny and
Shefflin and Galway,
precious about these things.
Yeah,
they can get very tribal, I don't know, will they draw much on this one? Like when Dennis went to Tipperary, it was a big thing because he was down there near the border and all that. Yeah, I suppose it could be a factor for them. It could be, anything at all. That I don't think they need much when they see a Tipperary jersey, mind you.
Yeah, call your two finalists. Who will be your All-Ireland finalists in 20th of July?
I think probably Cork and Kilkenny would be my.
I tend to agree as
fancy.
Well.
Yeah. No, I'd be less surprised maybe if the second one went the other way than the first one, but I hope we're not underestimating Dublin too much, but I think it's a tall order. Like with Kilkenny, we're talking about the experience they have, the bank of experience. Don't forget that Cork also have a fair bit of experience built up over the last years.
Yeah.
Get to the final last year and been in an All-Ireland final, having a bad day, of course, in 2021, but all that kind of builds up into your bank of experience and does stand you, I think, when it comes to days like this.
Well, either way, there's going to be a famine ended come July 20th. It'll either be a 20-year famine for Cork, a 10-year famine for Kilkenny. 6 years is not a famine, maybe a big famine, but for Tipperary, maybe it is. And it could be an 87-year famine, I think it is, for Dublin.
Dublin, yeah.
So
it's hard to even talk about famines with some of those traditional counties, but there you go.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting stuff anyway. And we'll be back again next week to preview all the GAA action.